Yes, it's time for Die of Death content. Let's do some analysis videos, why don't we? For now, let's start with Pursuer. Pursuer is the baseline starting character that you first play as, obviously. He's just a very basic generic character that is very easy to grasp, which is one thing that almost every character in this game has in common. They're not super hard to understand and they're not overcomplicated, but in some way they're challenging to play as while also being challenging to go against, as a good Pursuer main can really destroy you. I mean, a good main for all of these characters can destroy you anyways, but let's talk about Pursuer's, baseline kit. Pursuer has 3 moves, which is the most amount of moves that any killer has in the game. He has Cleave, which allows him to lunge forward with a dagger, dealing 20 damage and inflicting bleeding, 10 damage over the course of 10 seconds, and also revealing the location of anyone who's hit. This ability also has end lag, which no matter what, so even if you miss, you will still get the end lag, so it's best to try and hit this move as efficiently as possible. But you do lunge yourself pretty far, which means if you're running low on stamina, you can use this as a way to push yourself forward. Which, by the way, let's understand that killers have a whopping 20 extra stamina compared to survivors. And let's also understand the fact that some abilities for survivors actually decrease the amount of stamina that they have, but I'll talk about that in another video. For now, let's get back to Pursuer. Bleeding damage is pretty strong, as it can pretty much just kill a survivor without needing to pursue them any longer. In my opinion, I would think, I would say Pursuer is like an ambush monster, really. He's an ambush killer, which is fine. It's cool. I guess it makes sense with his, his background, but anyways, this can be a very good counter to certain moves like block, because if you hit a survivor that blocks your attack with Cleave, then it'll still give them the bleed damage. So that's pretty useful. It's funny too, in most cases, because when you hit a survivor that's on low HP with Cleave, and you just watch them bleed out, they kind of just fall and die. You don't really have to do anything. They kind of just bleed out and die. It's really funny. I like that a lot. Next move is Howl, which is one of the most useful moves out of them all. He can scream and locking himself in place for its duration and slowing every survivor on the field for exactly 6 seconds. This is an extremely useful ability if you run low on stamina, which you can use it to then catch up to the survivors while also regaining stamina. It's very, very good, very effective at what it does, but it can be a very punishing move as, like I said, it locks you in place, which means that any survivor that has punch or a sheriff gun, they can pretty much just stun you and render your ability useless, which really sucks, but I guess that's just a good way to counter him in some cases, as most of the killers in this game are pretty broken. Which, no, it's understandable. This game isn't a full game yet, and it's subject to change, so you never know how different the characters will be on the full release, how different their balances will be. So yeah, I think it's perfectly fine that they're in a, unbalanced state now. We're kind of just having fun and enjoying the game. We don't really need to complain about it as much because this, like I said, isn't a full game. So yeah, don't take it too seriously, just have fun with the game. The next move, Stalk. This is the move that you would use for ambushing survivors. This is his ambush factor that comes into play. You do a weird, scary thing and become invisible. Your speed is heavily increased and it highlights every survivor on the map. You can't use any other abilities in this state though, and it has a very long end lag when you come out of your invisibility, which means same thing with Howl. If you're coming out of invisibility as you come near a player, then they could probably just stun you as you're, waiting for your invisibility to wear off, which can suck, but at least you gain a bit of distance and you're closer to the survivors now, which that's kind of what the point of the ability is. It's only ever really useful if you're running low on stamina or if you're just across the map from a survivor. If you're running low on stamina but you have just enough to get close enough, then don't use this move extremely often, because then you're just giving the survivor an opportunity to regain their stamina whilst you're waiting for your invisibility to wear off, which isn't something you want, considering how much end lag you have when you wait for your invisibility to come off. And if the survivor has a stunning ability, you know, it's gonna kind of counter your stock, which really sucks. Unless you're just really good at the game and you can just, you know, bypass it. But if you're not, then don't use stock a crap ton. It's not the most useful thing in the world, and it's not something you should rely on, really. Now, being realistic, Pursuer on his own is actually really strong. While he does do the least amount of damage out of all the killers now, he is still a very strong killer. He can server wipe without the usage of his abilities most of the time. If anything, I think the only ability that you really need to use for, you know, server wiping is probably Stalk, as most survivors will have themselves across the maps and you just need to get that mobility. But other than that, you don't really need to use your other abilities as much. Even then, you can probably win without the usage of Stalk, because he's just so strong on his own. Like, that extra 20 stamina goes so far. And not to mention that killers are slightly, I tested it by the way, they are slightly faster than survivors. It's slightly, a very, very tiny amount, but it's big enough to be noticeable. So yeah, I think Pursuer is a pretty scary killer to go up against, but of course there are counters to him. He's not the strongest killer in the world, and I would say he's not as strong when you compare him to other killers like Artful or Killjoy, as those killers can be extremely annoying zoners. They are very, very annoying, and I'll talk about them in that video. But for Pursuer, as of right now, I don't think he's anywhere near stupid broken. He's not the hardest thing to counter in the world, but he can be extremely annoying to go up against if you're going up against a very good Pursuer, as most of the time Pursuers are usually played by people who are new to the game. Either that, or it's people who just, you know, want to win. As in my opinion, out of every killer, Pursuer has the most likelihood of winning, which I know that sounds weird because I just said that he's not as strong in comparison to Killjoy or Artful, but that's because Killjoy and Artful technically have circumstances. See, in certain maps, Killjoy can probably lose most of the time because of the boundaries that, you know, position him in a very bad light. Artful can also be a bit of a wild card at most of the times, as there have been a more variety of bigger maps, which means they're not as easy to zone players in. But even then, as long as you make usage of it and you position yourself well, then you can zone players. But back to Pursuer. See, Pursuer doesn't need to rely on zoning. His abilities alone are just strong. He doesn't need to control where survivors go. He just needs to stay on top of them long enough. He just needs to surprise them well enough so that way he can execute them pretty easily. Like, let it not be let it not be mistaken. Pursuer is very scary, especially in Double Trouble. Double Trouble can really mess you up with a double Pursuer, because if one of them stalks and then the other one chases you, well, you're kind of just screwed, because you have to, you know, use your stamina to get away from one, but the other one can pretty much just stalk you and chase after you whilst you're conserving your stamina, which means the stalker or Pursuer that comes out of that stalk will have all of their stamina ready to chase you down, whilst you have none due to burning your stamina from being chased by the other one. Now, he's pretty good in Double Trouble with anybody because of his Howl ability. See, Howl, like I said, slows survivors down in the radius, which means whilst he's slowing them down with Howl, another killer, you know, their teammate, can come in and just destroy you like nothing. It's very strong how well he is paired up with other players with his abilities. So yeah, I think Pursuer is pretty good. I wouldn't say he's the strongest right now in my eyes, but I think he's like second strongest in my opinion. So yeah, I would give Pursuer a solid A tier, like a high A tier, like he's second place. He's very close to being perfect, but there's a stronger killer than him. So yeah, that's my rating on Pursuer. So yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Also, Jesus Christ, can we just stop getting double trouble so much? We get it like, we get it once every 2 rounds. Why?